the progression of America from a place that wanted no military whatsoever. In 1938, we were training potential draftees with fake rifles, just, wooden broom handles. Now, the most sacred cow in the federal budget is defense. And we're spending $7 or $8 million a day right now, as you and I are talking, getting rid of one gang of thugs in Syria so that the elected gang of thugs can rule Syria. That's our taxes, and it's not our business. But people make profit off it. When you go back to Vietnam, that's a critical point. If you're a captain in the U.S. Army and Vietnam doesn't happen, the likelihood is you're going to retire probably as a major teaching ROTC. If Vietnam does happen, that captain is going to retire as a colonel. Much better deal. Upper level officers would all retire as generals, and they would be in a position to make decisions on weapon systems. The scientists invent them, but the Army decides, or the Air Force or whoever, they decide we like this one and not that one. And when they point to this one, the bags of cash are pushed over by their feet for bribes for these huge contracts. And that's a way of life in the military procurement business. That's why the hammers on jets cost $7,000. It's got to be paid for somehow, and that goes back a long way. And it hasn't stopped. And now, any chance we get to get involved with weapons, we do it. 2 beheadings, and we bomb the place. 6 beheadings, we send in the troops. 10 beheadings, we send in Dick Cheney. That's the way it works. The crazy thing is, the president's approval rating is low, but it's 6 times as high as Congress's approval rating. So the people re-elected Congress and blamed the president. There's no logic. None. There's absolutely no logic. And sending back the rascals in Congress to shut down the government and blame the sending back of the rascals on the president. Makes no sense. And it's going to go on happening. And it's going to be about, the sacred cow of the defense budget, because they get every penny they ask for. No questions asked. The only reason right now for keeping NASA on the books is for them. Because we know how much weather satellites cost, and that's what we need NASA for. But $750 billion over 50 years so we could possibly land a man on Mars? That's idiotic. Where's the priority? We got kids that are hungry, we got infrastructure, we got stuff falling apart, and we want to spend billions to put the flag on Mars? I can't make any sense out of it. And when Kennedy became aware of the absolute strategic imbalance at the time of the missile crisis, we were bringing one ICBM online every day, and the Russians are trying to build 10 a year. He says, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. Why are we doing this? He was with a science advisor one day when it was raining outside the Oval Office, and they were talking about the test ban treaty. And Kennedy asked about fallout, and the science advisor pointed to the rain and said, that's it. He said, what do you mean that's it? He says, fallout, it goes up in the air, comes back down to the rain. And it goes into the grass, the cows eat the grass, and kids drink radioactive milk. And Kennedy was just absolutely blown away at that kind of news. And as a result, we got a test ban treaty, which wasn't popular. Stopping the bomber gap wasn't popular. Stopping the missile gap wasn't popular. None of this stuff. It was the right stuff to do, but nobody has tried it since. It was about war and peace. It wasn't about the mob. It wasn't about Cuba. And I think I said to you one time, when these outsiders, and I'm going to say Jimmy Carter was something of an outsider, Clinton was something of an outsider, Obama was something of an outsider, when they get elected, I'm sure they get a wonderful tour of the White House, and you're going to live in this grand home, and you're going to have servants and cars and your own helicopter and your own airplane, and you're going to have anything you want except the right to make decisions. And on the day that you decide you're going to become president and make decisions, you should sit down and watch the Zapruder film a few times.
What explanation is it that Jack Kennedy's brains were blown out because his elite guard stood down that day? This is important. What died with him? This isn't just solving a murder case or finding who the perpetrators were. Obviously, they got away with it, so you can't even prosecute them. But what died with them? Was it really JFK that they were killing, or was it an ideal? And Martin Luther King, were they trying to kill him? It's easy if you have a path. It's easy to blame a single guy because you can say, hey, who can know the mind of the insane or the disturbed? Or as Richard Russell described to LBJ when he was talking about Lee Harvey Oswald, a generally misanthropic individual. Say, well, who can know the mind of a lone nut, generally misanthropic person? And so when you pin it on them, you don't have to know what else they killed because they were just a nut trying to kill that guy. And they killed all this other stuff, but that's just a side event. What I'm asserting here is that they weren't killing the individual. They were killing the ideal. They were killing the approach that these people were taking. These people were giving individuals back their freedoms of choice. They were giving individuals back their liberty. They were identifying where the liberty resides. Liberty resides inside the individual. It is not a gift that is granted by a government to the governed. Our Constitution even says it in it. And whether a person believes in God or they don't, the idea is the same when it says basically that these things are self-evident. And these are not owed by a government. These are God-given rights. And so a government can't take them away. And these individuals were pointing that out. They were empowering the individual to embrace their own liberty. And the way that you embrace your own liberty is you get along with each other. Don't you see? If you get along with each other, that's your liberty. And I think that's the message that was murdered in Dallas, that was murdered in Memphis, that was murdered in Los Angeles, was the idea that you own your liberty. We have the ability to have those feelings today if we choose to have them. The way that we were inspired by JFK and Martin Luther King still exists within us, but we have to have the courage to bring it out.